Hi, welcome back. This is Dr. Burton. Are you still wondering about the relevance of understanding philosophy and the history of philosophy? Well, I hope I can help you a little bit today by looking at some current research that has come out from the Cultural Research Center at Arizona Christian University, which is in my neighborhood. And they have the American Worldview Inventory going on. And this is release number 8. Postmodernism and secular humanism increasingly influence American adults. So this is really new research from Dr. George Barna, and I'll just read a little and comment on it because I want you to see what's happening in the world and the importance of philosophy. So it says, with 9 out of 10 adults, 88%, crafting a unique worldview fashioned from the personally appealing parts of other worldviews, one of the most interesting questions relates to exactly which other ideas they find most attractive. So people are putting together their own worldviews. Remember, we talked about a worldview having an epistemology, a metaphysics, an ethics, and that's where we make all of our choices from. So people are putting together their own worldview. New analysis of data from the American Worldview Inventory of 2021, the annual Worldview assessment by the Cultural Research Center at Arizona Christian University, indicates that postmodernism and secular humanism contribute significantly to the customized worldviews of Americans. So we should pause and say, what is postmodernism and what is secular humanism? Both of them are philosophies. You can call them worldviews with underlying philosophies. Postmodernism is what comes after the modern period in philosophy. The epistemology of postmodernism is highly skeptical and is, because skepticism says we can't have knowledge, it's based more on the individual's perspective. So I've talked about perspectivalism, coming out of the philosophy of Friedrich Nietzsche and going into some of the postmodern thinkers like Derrida and Foucault and some recent thinkers where we can't really know anything besides our own perspective. By and large, most postmodernist thinking is materialist. All that exists is matter, and matter is eternal, and it's also constantly in flux and constantly changing, so it's unknowable. Secular humanism, I would say, is a slightly older view than postmodernism, and I'm also going to say it's a little less consistent. Secular humanism is going to say, again, they are going to assume that all that exists is the material world. They do think, unlike postmodernism, that the observable world is knowable, perhaps through science. It can be analyzed, it can be known. So they're less skeptical, but both of them assume material monism. All that exists is matter, and matter is eternal. And they may hold to that view more or less consciously and more or less consistently. And stemming from the view that all that exists is matter would be a view of human nature. Humans are also part of the material world, the natural world. Probably some form of evolution would be assumed. And humans probably are fundamentally not rational, but animal and operating out of an animal nature. Okay, so that's a view that is becoming more and more dominant. Overall, only 2% of the population have adopted secular humanism as their dominant worldview, consistently thinking and acting in ways that are in harmony with the foundational tenets of that philosophy of life. However, 1 out of every 6 adults, 16%, regularly thinks or acts in ways that reflect the principles of secular humanism. I think it could be higher, but okay. I didn't do the research. I'm around a particular group of people that maybe are more secular humanist in the academy. Postmodernism has been embraced as the dominant driving worldview by only 1% of the public. Maybe those are the more consistent postmodernists. However, it too regularly forms the basis of the choices of 16% of U.S. adults, according to the latest findings from the CRC director. Okay, so though there may be a low percentage of people who are professing to be postmodernist or professing to be secular humanist, those attitudes and values of those philosophies have been permeating all of culture. All right, let's go back. Those statistics suggest that secular humanism and postmodernism are among the more widely utilized worldviews, only behind biblical theism, that is the biblical worldview, and moralistic therapeutic deism as the life philosophies that Americans most often rely upon for decision-making guidance. Okay, this is interesting because now we see some other worldviews being introduced. Biblical theism, where theism is the view that says God the Creator exists and is the eternal being. And biblical worldview could include Judaism, Christianity, and if you want to be really liberal with that reading, Islam. Judaism, Christianity, Islam are all theistic. I'm not sure I'd say they're all biblical. Probably what they meant here by biblical is Christianity. Moralistic therapeutic deism, though, is a term that's been used a lot lately. Deism is the view that there is a God, he is the creator, but he doesn't reveal himself through scripture. There is no biblical theism and deism. It's just God the creator, and perhaps this God is does not interact, does not really care about humanity. Now, what's this moralistic therapeutic part? God is used by humans as a source of therapy, as a means of getting through life, as a hopeful view, as a God's a buddy to humans. And we get our morality this way. This is a modern view, and maybe it's a postmodern wishful thinking view. Like, okay, so I don't like the implications of postmodernism because if all is flux and nothing is permanent, then there is no permanent moral standards. There's no permanent human nature. We really can't know what is good. That leads us down this road to nihilism, meaninglessness, and we need meaning. So maybe moralistic therapeutic deism is a way of humans making up meaning for themselves with a God in the background. I would say it's not very coherent. But we do have now several philosophies on the table. Material monism, which is behind postmodernism, and secular humanism, theism, which is a contradictory view, and deism, which is also a contradictory view from the material monism. All right, let's keep going. The research notes that most Americans do not know what worldview they possess or draw from in their daily choices. That's frightening. Most Americans do not know what worldviews they're drawing from when they make their choices. So choices assume that we have values. Values assume that we have a view of the good life. And the view of the good life assumes that we have a view of reality and human nature, and we have a view of how we know things. So basically, a lot of Americans don't know their philosophy of life. In fact, the most common worldview among Americans is syncretism. What's that? That's when you're trying to put views together that wouldn't ordinarily go together. They're syncretizing contradictory views. So I just told you material monism is a contradiction. Theism and deism and material monism are contradictory views, but we try to put them together, syncretize them, and it's going to turn out there are other philosophies that we're putting together as well. So syncretism isn't a true worldview, but rather a collection of disparate worldview elements blended into a customized philosophy of life. Why would people do this? Well, it seems as though this happens because we're going off of what we like. We're going off of our feelings, what makes us feel good, rather than what is rationally coherent and consistent which is how philosophy should be done. When we're doing something like syncretism, it's more like sophistry rather than philosophy. Sophistry is seeking to find a way of life that works for us and persuading others on the basis of feelings rather than reason. Okay, this is scary. All total, 88% of American adults hold to syncretism. 88% are holding to incoherent worldviews. In syncretism, individuals pick and choose elements from various worldviews, creating a hodgepodge of beliefs that often conflict and contradict one another. So basically, we're putting things together that don't make sense. And if it doesn't make sense ontologically, according to the way reality is, it is not going to provide meaning for your life. So 88% of Americans are probably suffering through meaninglessness right now, if not more. A large share of American adults would be surprised to discover that many of their beliefs and behaviors are consistent with worldviews such as postmodernism, secular humanism, Marxism, and Eastern mysticism. Let's put them all together, right? So now we have Eastern mysticism thrown in here, which is probably in its most consistent form, spiritual monism. So material monism says all that exists is matter and matter is eternal. Spiritual monism says all that exists is spirit and spirit is eternal. It's the exact opposite of the assumptions of secular humanism. So are people really out there putting Eastern mysticism together with secular humanism? They're contradictory views, as are Marxism and theism. Marxism can go with postmodernism. Marxism can go with secular humanism. I suppose Marxism can go with Eastern mysticism. Some Eastern religions have found Marxism quite comfortable. So, but Americans, what are we doing? This report is the 8th release from the American Worldview Inventory, the first ever national study. Okay, so you can find out more on the Cultural Research Center website. Let's talk about postmodernism in America. Postmodernism is a word that is used so often. I refrain from using it because there's a lot of misunderstandings about what postmodernism is. But let's see what the Barna research is finding for us here. The worldview known as postmodernism is an extension of another worldview called existentialism. Existentialism fits within postmodernism, but I would say there's more. There's more to postmodernism. Existentialism is the view that humans have to create their own essence through their choice. There's no nature to anything, which is consistent with postmodernism. There's no nature. Humans are natureless beings until they create their nature through their choices. And so maybe this whole era of worldviews is sort of postmodern, sort of existential, insofar as we are just picking what we want. And when we pick, there are implications that make us who we are. That's part of existentialism. The postmodern worldview is based on ideas such as the belief that all knowledge, values, and morals are dependent upon and thereby determined by social conditions. There is no absolute moral truth or universal moral boundaries. Science and reason are of limited value to progress, and that everything, including personal identity and social roles, are constantly changing. Okay, I do kind of want to say the ideas expressed here are very true of our contemporary era. What label we put on them, I'm not sure. I'm not sure I would call it postmodern or existential, but I do think the philosophy of today does have the values that social conditions are where humans are the stuff of human nature. You are who you are because of your social conditions. There's no moral truth, no moral absolute, no universal truth, and science and reason are limited because Why? They're the product of a particular history that is also part of the social conditions. So science doesn't actually get us to truth. Reason doesn't actually get us to truth because science and reason are part of Western social conditions. If we lived somewhere else in the world, maybe we'd have a different view of science and reason. I don't think that's true, but okay, that's a claim of this current philosophy. This worldview is very self-focused. It is skeptical or dismissive of large-scale narratives that seek to explain our existence and experience, including religious narratives. Okay, so that is a postmodern view that all philosophies are part of a narrative, and the narrative is made up by humans. And Nietzsche thought that too. Philosophy is involved in making up stories, and then we believe the stories are true, and we forget they're fictions. Postmodern thought is at the forefront of the emerging non-traditional moral order in America. Okay, so it's important to know the philosophy that the majority of people believe around you and in the institutions around you. A foundation of such thought is that all truth is subjective and that there are no moral absolutes, a perspective adopted by 54% of Americans. This is crazy and tragic. So the only truth there is my truth. So let's talk about the distinction between my truth and the truth. Postmodernism would deny the truth. There is no capital T true. Capital T true is where my thoughts accord with reality. So reason grasps what is real. That's truth. If we deny that reason grasps reality, then we are left with our own subjective thoughts, subjective experiences, and that's what I was calling perspectivalism earlier. Now, this isn't a new view. I think it came forcefully on the scene with Friedrich Nietzsche and his perspectivalism, and it has been increasingly growing and catching steam. But to see 54% of Americans believe this view is a little bit alarming. I would say perhaps more people believe it unconsciously. Those who embrace postmodernism, therefore, are more accepting than other people of breaches of traditional morality. Why? Because traditional morality is made up. Nietzsche said that Christianity is the, not the opiate of the masses, what did he call it? Slave morality. Marx called Christianity the opiate of the masses. Friedrich Nietzsche called it a slave morality. It's keeping you from pursuing your desires, traditional morality. So if the good is some kind of pleasure, because we're like animals pursuing survival and pleasure, then traditional morality is keeping you from that. It's enslaving you. Okay, let's keep reading. For instance, lies or deceptions that protect an individual or are based upon an alternative view of the causal circumstances are deemed viable in a postmodern world. So you can lie for your, fulfillment of desire. If the good is the goal and you need to pursue that goal, then the means, the ends justify the means. So if pursuing pleasure is the goal and you need to get that goal through lying, then the means of lying to pursue that goal are justified. All right, so it's okay if that's what you need to achieve in this postmodern world. Whereas traditional morality would say lying is wrong. You should speak the truth and only the truth. Similarly, incidents of theft or cheating that aid someone in need could be justified. Yeah, but why aid people in need? I mean, I don't know if they could be justified, really. Why aid anyone at all? Why justify helping people? So social justice is unjustified in postmodernism as well. Sexual relations outside of marriage are behaviors that would not trouble those embracing postmodern views. Well, why should they? Because if pleasure is the good, and I don't even know why a person would pursue marriage at all, unless it makes you feel good somehow. I like that value. How do you justify the value of traditional marriage or monogamous relationship in a postmodern view where there's no objective truth? How do you justify it? It's based on preference and personal choice, preference and pleasure. Although most Americans describe themselves as Christian, 4 out of every 10 adults, 41%, reject the notion that every moral choice we make either honors or dishonors God. So a lot of people say they're Christian, but they don't live that way. So inconsistency, a lack of integrity. That is consistent with postmodern thinking. So postmodern thinking has infiltrated the church, which both claims that there may not be a supernatural being to whom we answer, and that all our moral choices are about our life rather than fulfilling the expectations of a supernatural being. So the church has lost its way and has accepted worldly philosophy, particularly postmodern worldly assumptions, unconsciously and inconsistently. And the church is not leading in its philosophy. So I'm going to pause here and just kind of pontificate for a second about the importance of philosophy for Christians. Christians should be doing good philosophy if they want to maintain their own belief, because we're going to be taken captive by postmodern thinking if we don't think consistently. And if you want the world to be influenced by Christian values, this is quickly being lost because we don't have a defense for the faith, because we don't understand the philosophies of our day, and we don't understand how they're taking us captive. Okay, I'm off my hobby horse now. Given its doubts about the existence of God, believing that there are no all-inclusive Given its doubts about the existence of God, believing that there are no all-inclusive religious principles, commands, truths, or teachings that should direct our choices, it is natural to find that postmodern advocates are offended by Christian evangelism. So, if truth is subjective, what's true for me is true for me, what's true for you is true for you, then going out and trying to evangelize people is going to be offensive because you're saying the truth of Christianity is true for everyone. Now, I would say if Christianity is true, then it should be clear that God exists. It should be clear that humans need a redeemer. And it should be clear that the scriptures are that source of redemption, the Old and New Testaments, and Christians should be able to show that. If you can't show that, then you have no business evangelizing others because they're going to say that's just your view. So we need to see what is clear to reason, and we need to speak from that place, not from personal experience, because everybody has personal experience, and that's a postmodern way of evangelizing in the first place. What may be more surprising, though, is the fact that more than 1/3 of adults share that view, deeming proselytizing to be untenable. I think it is untenable if we keep doing it the way we're doing it. So all humans should be speaking the truth, pursuing the truth, and defending the truth. So if you think what's true for me is true for me, then either you keep it private, or you keep it private, I guess, right? Don't tell me about your truth if you don't want to defend it rationally to me. Otherwise, it's just a personal preference. Like, I like chocolate. Some people don't. I'm not going to force chocolate on you, so I'm not going to force my personal preference for religion on you. But if a religion is objectively true and can be shown to be true, then you should be able to present an argument to others. You can't persuade them of that truth, but you can show them the opposite is impossible. So if Christianity is true, postmodernism is impossible. It is false, necessarily so, because they're contradictory views. So Christians should be able to show where postmodernism is false. All right, so I'm going to wrap up the postmodernism section and come back to do the others because I think this video might be going long. All right, so 39% claim that human life has no intrinsic value. Think about that. 39% of Americans think that human life is valueless. All right, I find that hard to believe. 29% express their commitment to getting even with those who wrong them. Okay, so 29% of people think revenge is okay. 29% believe there's no way of knowing whether God or a supernatural being exists. Okay, so that's kind of low. 29% think you can't know. So what? The other high percent think that we can know? I don't know. 28% indicate that they treat people based on their current feelings and circumstances. Okay, a lot of people are out there acting out of their feelings. 24% believe that historical narratives are unreliable because they are subjective human perspectives. So no history is reliable? I don't know. Then what are we going to do? Just throw out all the history? I don't think so. You can corroborate history. Some things are subjective, some things aren't. But we need to do the hard work of critical thinking first to get a worldview in place that is not contradictory, that has arguments, that is based in reason, that is clear. If a person was seeking, they could know it and would know it, and that is historically rooted. I think we can't throw out history. Some historical narratives are flawed, others are not. We have to do the hard work of finding out what's what. Otherwise, we're just pushing the easy button. Postmodernism based on your feelings is pushing the easy button. I don't have to think now. I'm just going to accept this. I'm just going to go with my feelings. What if it takes you to a really bad place? What if it takes humanity to a really bad place? Because I think that's where we're headed. The easy button has its limitations, and it might be that someone else tells you what to do and forces their views on you. All right, so let's pause here, and in the next video, we'll pick up with secular humanism in America.